it's really quite peculiar. If you watch the interviews of Lue Elizondo and Chris Mellon, and even the interviews of Harry Reid, that it's inevitable that they will get to this point. Each and every one of them get to this point of saying, well, it could be Russian, it could be Chinese, but it may be something completely different. And then people will say, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And then they will say things like, well, we may not be alone. I mean, that's actually part of the script. We may not be alone. And so you say to yourself, what the heck does that mean? What does that mean? And then some people press them and say, are you talking about an extraterrestrial from some other star system? And then they'll say things like, well, there are billions and billions of stars, and it's inevitable that there's life somewhere else out in the universe. So we hear what it is they're saying, but they will never say it. They will never say, yes, I believe that there's a realistic probability that these vehicles are being staffed by people from another planetary system, from another star system. They won't say it because that's an extraordinary quotable quote. And if it's attributed to somebody who's the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, people will all start assuming that he knows that, and it's being concealed. I think one of the most important questions that we have to keep pressing on, all of us, is that who is in charge here? If it's not MJ12, if those documents are deemed by a lot of people not to be authentic, then what is the group that is analogous to MJ12? I mean, for anybody to keep on saying over and over again that nobody really knows, that nobody anywhere in the Defense Department has any coordinated understanding of what these vehicles are, where they come, nobody can believe that. I mean, I've always been willing to attribute a certain level of incompetence to any government organization because I've seen it so often, from police departments to defense departments to CIA to everybody else, but nothing on this scale. You don't have vehicles being monitored coming from 80,000 feet down to 50 feet above the water in less than 1 second. Estimated about 43,000 miles an hour, and then going underwater and traveling at 100, now 200 miles an hour or under the water. And all around our battleships and our aircraft and over nuclear facilities and turning off the nuclear missiles. And then nobody is figuring out who these people are. I mean, that's just not happening. So that this constant, oh, shucks, we just don't quite know what's going on, or everybody's in their own stovepipe and they aren't communicating with each other. I mean, that nobody with a political IQ above room temperature believes that, and so the thing we have to keep pressing for here is, who is in charge here? If secretaries of defense aren't being briefed in on this, if presidents of the United States are not being briefed in on this, if the heads of Senate intelligence committees are not being briefed on this, who is it that's briefed in on this? Who is it that's doing the briefing in on this? That exists somewhere. And that's the key to this thing. And what that does is it bleeds over into the entire question about our government. Who is it that is in charge of really pulling the strings behind the Democratic Party, Republican Party, the Senate and the House? Who is it they're all afraid of? I spent 20 years in Washington, D.C., and it's perfectly clear that when you start pressing on them over a number of different issues, for example, I brought a full memo laying out the smuggling operations of the cocaine operations being smuggled with Central Intelligence Agency participation into the United States. We tracked the Refugio Trafico de Punta Arenas, the shrimp boat companies that were bringing these in, the house where they were being kept. I had the unlisted telephone number of the house. I had the code words you used to order the cocaine from them. I met with the head of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency strike force, sat down with him with one of his very best friends who brought me to the meeting, and I pushed the memo across the desk to him, and he looked at it and read it, and he looked up and pushed it back to me, and he said, "Look, Dan, you know what this is, and so do I. I plan to live to see my retirement." Okay, who is it they're afraid of? Who is it that is knowledgeable about this? Who is it that are pulling the strings on this? Who is it that has the technology? Who is it that's garnered the technology? And, there are people that are totally unbelievable who say, oh yeah, I know who it is, and they've got the whole secret space program, and I've been to other galaxies, several, None of that's true, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter is somebody knows. And our job is, once this door is started to get open now, is for us to flood this door, bring in all the information that we know, give all the information to the American people, and try to generate a movement of people. And one of the things we need to do, very importantly, we have to participate in helping to communicate the spiritual dimension of this whole thing, or what is understood by the lay people as a spiritual dimension. We've got to get this across to people so that we can overcome this threat analysis, that everything has to be perceived as a threat against the interests of our nation state. We have to start perceiving ourselves as a planetary culture, a particular species that we are, and we have to develop our relationship with other extraterrestrial species. And that reflects upon all of our deep religious beliefs, and these are things that we have to come to grips with in the community. So I think I agree with Don. I agree with everybody who's spoken here, that this is a unique moment in history. I know positively, based upon 50 years of experience with them, they do not intend to release any more of this information than they have already decided they want to release, for whatever their reasons are. Our job is to make more of that information available and to generate a nationwide, worldwide, planet-wide movement to insist upon our people being told about this, because we have to participate in this decision. These are sets of decisions that are being made now that are going to affect our relationship with these extraterrestrial beings for another 50,000 years in the future. This is an extraordinary time period in human history, and we have to tread carefully but consistently and persistently to get these answers to these questions right now, and not stand for these people hiding this stuff from us for their own perceived advantage.